everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started here. Just a quick reminder, as you all know, we are on the Zoom platform. I know many of you have spent lots of time in Zoom over the last few years, but just in case you need a little refresher, we just have some examples on there. You're able to use the chat feature. You can send us questions throughout the presentation. We're going to have Q&A at two different parts during the presentation. One's just about the project, one about your specific project area. So feel free to throw questions in the chat as you think of them. And then when we get to our Q&A sections, you can actually unmute and ask your question out loud if you prefer. So those resources are there for you, but we'll go ahead and get started into our presentation this evening. Go to the next slide. So we are here talking about the 5th by Northwest project area for Blueprint Columbus, specifically the EdgeHill Meadow sub area. This is our final design meeting. So this is the third one we've had so far. We had one at like 30, around 60, and then this is the 90 or final design meeting we're going to be going over this evening. So you will be hearing from a number of people this evening. You can switch it. So my name is Mara Waymeyer. I am with the Blueprint engagement team, so I will be spending some time with you this evening. I'm joined by Tiffany Kahn, who is the City Relations Coordinator with the City of Columbus. She's going to be talking through some information about Blueprint Columbus. We're also joined by Greg Garden, who is the Project Manager for the City of Columbus. He will also be sharing some insight with you this evening, as well as Patrick Carnes, who is from Strand Associates. They are the design engineers on the firm, and they're going to be talking about the designs for this specific sub-area. So as I mentioned, our agenda tonight is pretty quick and painless here. We're going to do Blueprint 101. So we're just going to give a little refresher. I know some of you may be familiar with the project. Some of you, this project might be new. Essentially, what the goal of this work is, and what Blueprint is. So Tiffany's going to spend some time refreshing that. And then Greg and Patrick are going to talk again about this specific project area. So this is the 5th by Northwest project area, and 5th by Northwest has two sub areas. So Sunrise Glen is the one area, and this is EdgeHill Meadow tonight, which is the second area. So we're going to talk about the specific plans for that area, and then we're also going to have some time for Q&A to talk about Blueprint as a whole, as well as the plans for your project area, the timeline, and all those good details. So I'm going to pass it off here to Tiffany, who's going to talk a little bit about Blueprint 101 and just provide that general refresher of what the project is this evening.
Thanks, Mara. Again, my name is Tiffany Kahn. I'm the Community Relations Coordinator at the City of Columbus, coordinate outreach for the Blueprint project. We're going to start off, and I'm trying to make this pretty painless for you. Many of you may have heard this a couple times, so try to go through it pretty quickly. Start off with a nice video for our visual learners. So what's happening, and the reason why we're doing this project, is that rainwater is getting into our sanitary laterals through cracks and holes that could have been created because it's an old pipe or tree roots got in there or just damaged. What happens is that water fills up the sanitary pipe and it overflows. And so the mechanism for overflow that we have is that it goes up into your basement, or could also go out into the rivers and streams. So the sanitary sewer was not built to handle both wastewater and rainwater, and that is the reason that it is overwhelming with all this extra rainwater that's getting in and either backing up into your basement or overflowing out into the rivers and streams. So the EPA said that's not okay. We have to fix that problem here in Columbus. So Blueprint Columbus is our solution to that. We could have built lots of bigger pipes. We have that question a lot, but we tried to be proactive and innovative with our solution and thinking about how do we actually attack the problem at its source. The way we do that is investing in fixing the existing infrastructure. So we actually want to seal up those holes and seal up that system and keep the rainwater from getting in there in the first place so that we can fix the problem at its source. We use local materials, local crews, for the most part, we use native plants always. And these are key parts of our project. Native plants help just keep everything here. They're special plants, so they can handle rain, they can handle drought. We use all native plants in our gardens. And also we want to improve stormwater discharges. So we're trying to fix the problem itself, but then also create better cleaner quality water in our rivers and streams. And, we do draw our drinking water from some of those sources. So that just helps to improve it from the source. Our project adds permanent local jobs. So not only do we need people to build rain gardens and do the other work that we have on the project, but we also need a workforce to maintain them. So our actual project goes to 2045, but then is indefinite as far as maintenance goes. So that is definitely a permanent local job that we are creating, many of those. And we try to engage with neighborhoods and residents as much as we can, as early as we can. And we want to take the approach of these are things that we're leaving behind in your community. We want to hear from residents. We want to work with residents as much as possible to create some leave behind that you're proud of, that you feel like adds something to the neighborhood. And again, addresses consent order requirements just means that the EPA told us we had to do something, and there's no do nothing option. So we do have to fix this problem. All right, our project is a very large one. This map shows all of our different project areas. And I think if you can see my cursor, we started up here in Clintonville 1. Broke ground in North Linden 1, and we're about 3/4 of the way through in that project area. And then we'll be going into 5th by Northwest, the Hilltop, and Miller Kelton. So we're working our way throughout. But again, this is a really long project. So we're projecting it out to 2045, and we have 21 different project areas throughout the whole city. What these areas have in common is they're very irregularly shaped sections, right? They don't really correspond exactly to neighborhoods. And the reason for that is that they drew these based on the homes that were actually contributing to sanitary sewer overflows. And they're also based on sewer sheds and things that are super complicated that I don't even understand, but this is how they drew them. And basically it means that all of the houses within these boundaries are contributing to this issue. And so that is why they're included in this project area. Okay. So we have 4 different pillars, we call them, or tools in our toolbox to fix this issue. I'll go through these in a little bit more depth after, but I'll go quickly. Lateral lining, roof water redirection, sump pumps, and green infrastructure. So deeper dive. Lateral lining is what I was speaking of when I say we want to attack the problem at its source. We want to seal up our pipes so that that water can't get in. So what we do is we send a balloon-like thing through our manhole and up the sanitary lateral. On the outside of the balloon, it has a resin on it, so a sticky resin. When they blow it up, it sticks to the inside of the pipe and they let it cure. And when it cures, it hardens just like a brand new pipe inside of a pipe. And that keeps out the tree roots and it keeps out the rainwater. And so we're sealing up that system. And this is a really effective way of doing so. It's also a great improvement to your property and most of the time very non-invasive. So you might not even know it's happening. Roof water redirection. So the next 2, roof water redirection and sump pumps, we're moving the water away from our house. So the water is getting in through the lateral line through cracks, but the water can also get in through where your inside pipe for your sanitary connects to the outside sanitary pipe. That's also a source of where the water is getting into the pipe. So what we try to do is move that water away from your house's foundation and out to the street. And that way it's keeping it away from getting into that connection. So downspout redirection, we look for downspouts that splash maybe on splash pads like you can see in this top picture. Lots of older houses have that. And we look for where we can get those out to the street or at least 7 feet away from your house if possible. So not every home in every project area will get downspout redirection, but we look at all of the downspouts and see where can we do the best for getting this water away from the home's foundation. And when we try, we get it out to the street and we hopefully can direct it towards green infrastructure wherever possible. Again, with the sump pump, water around your foundation means water is seeping down. It could seep into your basement walls, but it also could seep into what we call the foundation drain. So this is a little tiny drain here. A lot of the older homes have them actually directly connected to the sanitary lateral. And we don't want that because that's a direct way that rainwater is getting into our sanitary lateral. So what we do is go in and disconnect that, put a sump pump in and get that water out and out to the street where it's supposed to go. Again, tying into green infrastructure where possible. So all residents in active blueprint areas that do not have a sump pump or have a sump pump that does not work are eligible for a sump pump inspection. So this is a voluntary piece of the program, and we have a meeting with the homeowner and talk about, could we put a sump pump in here? Would you like that? And this is what it takes as far as construction wise. But this is a free thing. So it's a really amazing part of our project. And if you do not have a sump pump or you have one that doesn't work, please let us know. Green infrastructure is what we'll mostly be talking about tonight. So the other pillars, either sealing up the system or removing the water away from our foundation. And the green infrastructure is there to take on that water. So we've moved a lot of water around and we need to make sure it has somewhere to go. And we also know that water rushing down the street picks up anything that it finds. So that could be leaves, that could be trash, anything on the street, which in the end goes straight to our, it's to the storm sewer, but then out to our rivers and streams. So if we route it through green infrastructure acts like a filter, and we can actually improve the water that comes out into our rivers and streams. These are some of the rain gardens and other types of green infrastructure that we currently use. So I'll go through these pretty quickly. We have behind the curb rain gardens with 2 walls. These have stacked stone. We have behind the curb rain gardens with no walls. These are a little more natural looking. They kind of blend in with the tree lawn. Bump out rain gardens, which, like they say, bump out into the street about the width of a parked car. These are great for capturing water running down the street, but also for areas that appreciate traffic calming. Silvacell is one of our newer tools. So if you can see, there's a little rain garden here, and then underneath the sidewalk, there's an area that retains water. So we can, this is a fairly new tool that we have. We have 2 of these built in Linden so far. Regional rain garden is a larger rain garden. We like to put these in traffic islands or sometimes land bank parcels or lots that the city would buy and put a larger rain garden in there. And we can treat lots of stormwater and impact less residents directly with this type of rain garden. And then pervious pavement. So we use these pervious pavers that join together with little tiny stones in between and look like this when they're finished. So it looks like a brick street. It's not actually a brick street, but it's a very nice tool to have. This is how this all works together. So green infrastructure itself, if you see this profile of a rain garden, our rain gardens are nature's natural filtration devices. And so we try to route the water there, either off of the street or through routing the sump pump to the street or the roof water to the street. And the plants on top, like I said, are native plants, and they're good in flood and they're good in drought. You soak up some of the stuff, then it goes through layers of mulch, what we call biossoil, which is a mix of soil and sand, and then layers of rock underneath. All of our rain gardens are special. They have an under drain that connects to the storm sewer system. So any water that gets in there that filters through goes into a perforated pipe and then eventually out to the storm sewer and then out to our rivers and streams. This diagram shows that we're trying to keep these 2 systems separate, right? So here's a sanitary sewer down here. We line that lateral and we keep all the wastewater going to the sanitary sewer. All this other stuff we want to route to the street, that rainwater, keep it away from the sanitary sewer, clean it when we can, and then get it to the storm sewer. So pervious pavement works a lot like a rain garden. Like I said, the bricks on top, well, they're not bricks, the pavers on top, and then layers of the stone and aggregate underneath. The pervious paver streets also have an under drain, so that would seep down through the cracks between the pavers, clean it as it goes, and then eventually make it to that perforated under drain and out to the storm sewer as well. Pervious pavement is nice. It's got a lot of benefits to it as well. It's pretty heavy construction. They dig down pretty deep and it's a pain in the neck during, but then afterwards, it's a very smooth street. It does calm traffic just because when you see something that looks different than asphalt, you're going to automatically just slow down a little bit. And then there's also reduced maintenance. So we have special trucks that come. We work with the Department of Public Service and they sweep these streets regularly. And then also we have trucks that re-chip them. So the little tiny pieces in between the pavers are necessary to maintain the spaces between. So we do that as well. All right, how do we choose where to put what? So our design engineer and our project manager, they work together with their teams and they look at where are the problem areas? Where do we see either ponding water or where is it that we know we're going to have more water that we need to take care of? We look at how much, like I just said, water we're needing to control and where does it flow naturally. But we're also looking above ground and below ground for barriers. Are there trees? Are there fences? Are there utilities underneath the ground that cannot be moved or that we can't work around? And then also what would improve the neighborhood? And that's where the residents come in and we try to ask you all, what do you think? Do you think this is something that you would like and that would help you in some way or get input from the residents from the start? So we have a priority list. I kind of went through it before, but we try to use the land bank or the green spaces first because those big regional rain gardens are less intrusive to individual residents. But if not, we look for spaces in the right of way that are, again, not very many barriers or in places that really need a lot of water controlled. And then we go pavers. So pavers are great. They're a little bit costly. So that's why they're third on the list. And then bump outs, and only really because previous concerns with residents, they do take parking away. So that is something that is a negative about bump outs, unless you're looking for street calling, right? Traffic calling. But that's our priority list. And then again, because the under drains in our rain gardens and our pervious pavement connect to the storm sewer, the city will maintain these indefinitely. So we have no expectation that residents will weed or mulch or clean any of the rain gardens or pervious pavement ever. All of this is done by our maintenance team. So they come out about once a month or more if necessary, but then they do the weeding and mulching. They look for plants that have died or need replaced. They remove the trash, check it, all the hardware and under drains, and remove sediment. And then eventually they will replace the bioswale when it needs to be done. So again, city will always be responsible for all the maintenance in these rain gardens and pervious pavement. All right, right now we can take, if you have any general blueprint questions about what I just presented, we can go ahead and answer those. Nobody?
Yes, we've got a question.
Okay.
Just a couple things.
Mhm.
They went in and paved our road that you guys are doing this on Eastview Avenue between 3rd and 5th. And we've been getting all the signs saying you're going to start doing the pavement and the gardens, the water gardens. And the thing is, you just kind of said something that not everybody's home is going to get tied to these, their home water or foundation water. The downspouts are going to get tied to all of these gardens, or even the permeable pavement. The question we have is, we have went to painstakingly work to get it out to the road. All of our gutters have been, the downspouts have been replaced. The problem is when they paved it, they're now below the surface of the road. We've talked to Columbus on this. Nobody has addressed this issue. The curbs are so low that some of them are below or at level with the road. And we're wondering if you're going to come in, and they said no one's going to remove the granite. They're just going to kind of do a curb and then drop it to it. But what happens if one of our houses is not being tied to that? We're now dealing with downspouts that aren't draining to anywhere. They're just stuck, and we had to put cleanouts in to get a blower to blow the water out of there. And we're just kind of like, and then we have some pumps that literally the guys putting the sump pumps in are saying it is soaked outside. We had one put in when it was so wet, and the guy said, I've gone 36 inches and I'm not even hitting any wet soil. So was the sump pump installed in the wrong area for the house? These are the questions. And the city worker had only been on the job for 1 week at best. So we're just kind of dealing with some of these issues as we've gone through this, and we're saying, and we've written emails, we've sent pictures, we've talked to several people, and we've never had anybody come back and follow up at all for the years that we've been dealing with this. I mean, this is frustrating. I feel like you're just telling us what we need to hear. And then when we address some issues, nobody has come to us. And so we're worried when you say these gardens are going to be maintained. All of our places, we have 3 doubles on Eastview, and they're going to be, and we're trying to make our places look nice. We worry about the neighborhood. We want to have a good neighborhood, a safe neighborhood. And we're wondering, these tenants are not going to go out and touch these gardens. And we just wonder, is the city really going to maintain these gardens? I mean, I can take my car and drive around all these gardens and see how they look right now. I don't know, but these are my concerns, and no one's addressed any of these things that we've sent pictures to, talked about, and we're just like, we go to the Zoom meetings, and I think at this point, you know, that we should have had more of an in-person meeting to kind of talk about this.
People on this call.
I mean, people are just kind of
Yes.
walking away from this, and I mean, we went to your first in-person meeting, which talked about the plans that we're going to put in this stuff, and that's about it. All I'm just kind of saying is we're concerned about the follow-up with a lot of this stuff, and we don't get to see the designs on, you know, we've looked at some in Clintonville where you guys have put in brand new curbs all the way around, beautiful gardens, nicely paved roads, and those things look amazing. And then we go a street over and they've got the bump out like you talked about, and it just looks really dumpy. And I kind of said, I don't want my neighborhood to look like that. I've worked hard on my places to get them nice, and I'm just kind of wondering, what are we getting? And then someone said, well, you're going to get just the straight curbs. We're going to put the curbs up, but when we go back to the granite, it may dip down. Some of the granite is underneath the road. And we're lost. So anyways, I'll let you go. I'm done.
No, you're fine. I'll answer part of this and then I may turn it over to Patrick or Greg because it's more of an engineering thing. I'm interested in the downspout thing. I just want to clarify. What I mean is just that sometimes the houses, we might do one downspout. We might not do any downspout because we can't, you know, it could be the grade of the yard or something like that where we couldn't do it, or they already have them all the way up to the street. They don't need us to do anything. So we look at each house as a separate case. We meet with the homeowner and talk about, you know, if there is planned work, this is what we're thinking. Is there anything else you want to tell us? Like this kind of stuff, like, hey, ours goes out to the street already. That's great. When we do the pervious pavement, and this is where I'll ask Patrick or Greg to jump in. If it's already out to the street, then it would still be out to the street after we're finished with our pervious pavement. As far as the curbs go, we're not a curb project, so we're not going to replace the curb along the entire street. If we're only working on a section of pervious pavement. Some of the ones in Clintonville coincided with Department of Public Service replacing the curb or repaving the street. So that's why some of them are completely repaved, and some of them, when they do the repaving completely, they do the curb too. So it is kind of confusing to have two different departments working at the same time. So I understand, you know, where your frustration comes from. The maintenance concerns, we have over 400 rain gardens that we're currently maintaining, and that's about once a month. We have, right now, we've had a couple public meetings. Hilltop is thinking that theirs are going to be filled with trash kind of fast. So we're reconsidering and thinking, oh, maybe twice a month. So this stuff is, you know, if residents feel like they're not being maintained enough, then we'll talk to the maintenance team and ask them to bump that up a little bit, but we don't expect the residents to ever touch them. Patrick or Greg, do you want to jump in about the either the granite or the connecting the downspouts onto the curb when we're done?
Patrick, would you like to handle that? I will say on Eastview, we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 rain gardens between 3rd and Thornwood. And then between Thornwood and West 5th, we're putting permeable pavement installed.
Still muted. No, I'm not.
Yeah, so regarding the downspouts in the paver well, in all the areas, but the paver area specifically. So on streets where we're proposing permeable pavers, the street section will be completely reconstructed, and part of that reconstruction is reestablishing a 6-inch tall curb. Your standard curb you're going to see out and about. Now, in areas where we're doing pavers, those curbs would not be replaced as granite curbs. Those would be concrete curbs when replaced for pavers. On the rain garden areas specifically, those will not be streets that will have wholesale curb replacement. There will be curb replacements as disturbed as part of the rain garden effort. Typically, the area of the rain garden, the street frontage of the rain garden and plus or minus 5 feet on either side would be what the curb would be replaced as. You will see that curb will be full height curb again as part of the replacement. As far as the downspouts going out to the street and the pave over by the Department of Public Service project, I don't have all the information there to comment on that one, so I'm probably going to have to defer to a follow-up or Tiffany for follow-up potentially on that.
When they touched me to against it. The thing is, I mean, think about what you just said. I'm picturing literally from Third. I'm down by Third. Our places are close to Third. We've got two rain gardens kind of splitting two of our properties. And I'm visualizing this wonderful view as I look down and I see our curbs are lower, higher, lower, higher. And then all of a sudden we get to halfway to Thornwood. And now you got this beautiful street, curbs repaved. And I'm like, this is a community. It's like, who thought that let's do half and half, and then we're going to have curbs that aren't even all the same height
on one side of the street.
And I'm just kind of looking at this going, try to look at the big picture here. As a homeowner,
It's gonna look terrible.
it's going to look terrible. And I'm sitting here saying, again, we addressed this exact issue when we had the first in-person meeting. We all got letters from Kokosing and the city saying, we're going to repave this. And we all said, is there any way to get this put off to a later time? And it's as if it just fell on deaf ears. And I get what you're saying. I know you guys are dealing with so many streets, so many different neighborhoods, and we're just one of that. I get that, but I'm kind of sitting here saying, as I look at the property tax, saying we're going to see a 30 to 40% increase on our property tax, but we're going to look at our road and see this hodgepodge of curbs, and then you're going to go down to those folks. And I know why you guys are doing it, because basically from Thornwood down, that's more single family homes, and from Thornwood back to Third, it's a lot of doubles that are rented. But I look at the people that I've put in, 6 different families in this. I'm changing the way the neighborhood is, with good quality people being in this neighborhood where they become friendly with each other. We've taken out fences in the back so that their dogs it becomes a community. I'm trying to do that as a homeowner or a landlord, so to speak, property owner. And then I sit here and go, and then I have to look at the front, and I'm just trying, as you said this, I'm looking at this in my head saying, so we're going to have some curbs that are raised up for the gardens. Then we're going to go back to the granite, and then we're going to go down to Thornwood. And it's going to be this beautifully semi-permeable pavement with nice curbs
And sidewalks.
And I'm sitting here going, okay, are they addressing sidewalks down our path?
No.
And this is the thing that just tell me that this is the best use. I just feel like sometimes I'm looking and saying, are we just spending money to spend money because we have to do this?
So, yeah, and I guess the one thing I heard in there that I did want to specifically comment on, there's some other thing or a couple things, and Tiffany and or Greg may have to help me out on this. The public meeting with Kokosing, I believe would have been related to the resurfacing project, not the blueprint project at this point, because we're not in construction at this point. I know you also mentioned sidewalks as well. On Eastview specifically, there is sidewalk plan to be added where there's a gap from the alley just north of Third. The sidewalk will be on the east side of the street, and that sidewalk will be continuous all the way to Fifth at that point. So there is sidewalk to be added in front of the properties you're referencing.
So we're getting sidewalk. Are we putting the
In
sidewalk?
conjunction with the rain gardens
That's correct.
Okay.
and
So I'm
sidewalks.
just curious how much of that, I mean, yard, we've got some trees that the city
That
put
the
in,
city- Yeah,
the city put in several years ago. They're
decades ago.
probably gonna have to have those removed. I'm just curious on, these are all those things. And the dealing with Kokosing, we actually addressed that at the blueprint meeting about the fact that we got the letter from Kokosing saying we're going to be repaving. So we addressed that to the folks at Blueprint and basically kind of got the same canned answer. That's the city we need to deal with. We don't work with them. And, and last year we watched Columbia Gas come in, and we have a brand new paved road, and Columbia Gas came in and put in a new main line and went across all the streets, and they chewed up part of the road again. So it's just kind of interesting. It's like, why do the roads? Wait till all of the infrastructure is done and then have it paved. Someone has got to know what's moving in the city and what's happening in the city. But that, like I said, it's just frustrating. I understand you guys are doing the best you guys can, and we appreciate it, but maybe we just need to have someone come out from Blueprint and actually speak with us and show you, because I think personally, we might have wasted some money on these septic tanks, or the sump pumps, because we have, we said, some people said we probably should put it further back in the house, but they said, nope, we're just putting it in front of the house, and that's all we're worrying about. And so like I said, I would love to have someone come from Blueprint that can just look at what's going on here. And we'd love to just discuss this even further, but or is the plan set that there is no movement at all?
Sorry, I was on mute. We can definitely come out there. So we're always willing to come out to you and talk to you about this stuff. It is at this point a final design presentation. This is, we've tried to incorporate not only resident feedback, but also feedback from the departments. And the other departments do see our plans, and there is conversation between them. I think that, we can always be better. We can, we also, timelines of projects are sometimes not exactly what we think. So it gets moved or it pushed out. And so that sometimes also affects, if a street gets paved at a certain time, but then another project, it could change, as well as slow down, speed up, that kind of thing. So I hear you in that. I don't have a good answer for that as far as, perfectly coordinating with the Department of Public Service. We haven't hit the sweet spot yet, for sure. So I hear you definitely. But if, Chip, if you want, we can set up a time to come out there. We may have missed you when we were walking around, but we're happy to come and
I
see
think you guys have we saw the flyers here, the little posts go up that you were walking.
Mhm.
When do you guys actually plan to break ground on those gardens? Like, what's the time frame?
So we're looking at spring 2024 to have our pre-construction meeting, and then shortly after that, break ground.
Okay.
About a year out.
Okay, that's good.
Tiffany, we have a question in the chat that I'm going to read. What is the maintenance for the pavers over time, and what happens if the road becomes uneven or has potholes? And then another question about when construction will start. So we kind of just answered that. And if you can speak to how long construction usually takes in regard to the pavers as well.
Sure. So I do encourage you, if you are in Clintonville, drive down East Dominion Boulevard and check out the pavers. They've been there for a couple of years. As far as, the vacuuming up the debris on the road, they do that regularly. And then the rechipping, they're figuring out a good cadence to rechip those pavers. You may notice there's spots that the pavers move a little bit and shift. So those little areas are addressed when we see them. Engineers, if you want to talk about, if she's saying, if there's potholes or if you have to dig up a larger portion of it, do we see that? Have we seen it? I haven't heard of maintenance like that so far on our other roads. They look pretty nice. But Patrick or Greg, if you want to add to that, happy to defer.
I will say that we're currently reviewing our current design standards of the permeable pavers. We're working with Public Service in coordination with them to address any of the issues that you've mentioned. So it's continually, we look for try to continuous improvement in changing our design as we construct things and get feedback back from the experience.
And as far as the construction goes, what they do on the paver streets, and what they have done in the past anyway, they'll go certain sections at a time. So it's usually 6 houses on each side, and they'll dig down, all the way down, do the things they need to do at the base, and then build it back up a little bit go the next section, do the same thing. And it's usually about 3 weeks of pain in the neck in front of your home where you can't park in front of your house. And they move on to the next chunk and you're back to parking in front of your house, and then they keep moving. They may come back again. It's 3 weeks at a time normally, but they could come back a couple times. So they kind of do it in a little wave. It's been very efficient and very, it's not as terrible as it sounds. It's a heavy duty construction, but most of the residents on the pervious pavement streets that we've had have been super happy with how it's went. As far as getting to your house, if you have certain concerns, we're happy to come out closer to pre-construction, because that's when we'll start talking to the contractor about, what street are they thinking about starting on? How are they thinking about doing this? And then helping to figure out if there's access concerns. That's when we start addressing that. So next year, early next year, spring, we can start talking about specific questions on your property and access during pervious pavement construction. But it's fun to watch, but I know it's a headache. So it is a lot of construction. And what was the other one, Mara? I'm sorry, I lost the third question.
It was about when construction will start. So I think you covered that one. We have another question from Meadows Road neighbors. It's about the location of pervious pavers though. So I might let Greg and Patrick do their presentation because I believe that they're going to answer this or address it. But if they don't answer the question, we'll circle back and I will ask it after Greg and Patrick talk a little bit more about the specifics within the project area.
Okay, great. I will move this along then.
I'm sorry, there's one more that popped up. It says, so the construction meeting will start spring of 2024.
Yeah, our pre-construction meeting we have in person with the residents, the contractor, and the inspection team and outreach, of course, will be there to answer questions that, what's construction going to look like for me? When will I not be able to park, in front of my house, or how does that look? Things like that. And we'll do that in the spring of 24. All right. So neighborhood plans, at this part, like I said a little bit before, we're at our final design, what we consider 90 to 100%. We're presenting these plans that have taken in consideration the residents' feedback, and then also other city departments and stakeholders. And we still are seeking input on we obviously are going to hear your concerns, but we're specifically also seeking input on planting preferences. So if you have a rain garden near you and you want to talk to us about what plants you would prefer, we're happy to hear that. So Greg Barden, he's our city project manager, and Patrick Carnes, who is the design engineer at Strand, also project manager, will go through these neighborhood plans. So I will turn it over to Greg to talk to you about.
Thank you, Tiffany. Overall, the EdgeHill Meadow project area is located between West 3rd Avenue on the south, King Avenue on the north. The western boundary is Northwest Boulevard. The eastern boundary is Olentangy River Road. But the proposed green infrastructure is really only going to be constructed within an area located between West 3rd Avenue on the south, King Avenue on the north, the western boundary being Northwest Boulevard, and the east boundary being Eastview Avenue. Looking at this schedule, currently we're at the final design. We have 100% plans that have been submitted for routing through the city process of review. So to date, we've held 2 public meetings, one in person, one virtual. We've incorporated the resident input as well as input from the other city departments. Currently at final design, which means we are at a point where we would hope to not make too many changes to the plan set. We want to solicit input on the planning preferences, as Tiffany mentioned, from those residents and businesses that have rain gardens located near their property. So the next steps really are to finalize the plans, bid the contract, then schedule and hold a public meeting, which would be in person, with the residents, the contractor, and our inspection teams. Currently, our projected schedule shows final sign plans in fall of 2023, we'll bid the contract in fall of 2023, and we'll have to schedule the pre-construction meeting in spring of 2024. I will now hand over to Patrick Carnes, the project manager with Strand and Associates.
Thanks, Greg.
Walk through the plans.
Thank you, Greg. So as Greg mentioned, my name is Patrick Carnes. I'm with Strand Associates and the project manager for this project. So in this project area, again, the area Greg generally described as King to 3rd and Northwest to Eastview, we have 19 proposed green infrastructure improvements. 13 of those being rain gardens within the right-of-way. So as you saw during Tiffany's presentation, those are the ones that are located behind the curb lines in the right-of-way, of course. Kind of think about it, that area behind the curb to 10 to 15 feet off the back of the curb. There is one right-of-way underground bioretention basin. I'll get into a little more of what that is with some visuals in a minute. And then 5 permeable paver streets. These will go from they're on north-south streets, and I'll talk about the specific locations here momentarily. But they will go from block to block. They'll go a full intersection to intersection length.
Wow.
Next slide, please. Thank you. So here you'll see the proposed locations for the right-of-way green infrastructure, as well as the permeable pavers. So the permeable pavers sections are shown there in yellow, with the right-of-way rain garden location shown in the pink throughout the project area. So first off, we're going to talk about the curbside 4-walled rain gardens. So these are part of the 13 right-of-way installations. There will be 1 on Primrose Place, 1 on Meadow Road, 5 on Doton Avenue, 1 on Virginia, and 4 on Eastview Avenue. So these will look very similar to what you see here. So as was kind of already discussed, you'll see the curb line reconstructed in the area of impacts by these rain gardens. They will have 4 concrete walls, much of which will be underground and you will not see. And then in the middle of those, you're going to have a mulch surface that is going to be depressed slightly from the road. And then that's going to be filled with the plantings, which, as mentioned, residents that are adjacent to those basins will have an opportunity to make suggestions about the types of plants from a palette that is available from the city of Columbus for plants that work well in these installations, because these things do fill up with water. So we want to make sure we're selecting plants that are resistant to being in saturated situations. So once it's done, you'll primarily see these concrete curbs around the 4 walls, and then the plantings in the middle. Next slide. So another kind of rain garden we're proposing, and there's only one of those proposed on Thornwood Place. So this is a representation of what it may look like along Thornwood there. It has sloped sides. So these sloped sides don't require us to have the 4 concrete walls you saw in the previous installation. However, the reason we're able to do this here is we had the space to do so, and the existing slope of the ground allowed us to do so. So in other areas, the slope of the ground will not allow us to connect back into the existing situation in the right-of-way and provide an efficient use of the area. So that's why we go with the 4-walled situation at that point. In this particular location, what you'll see is something new, is there will be curb added along the south curb line of Thornwood Avenue to direct more of that water as it continues to run off, to allow it to direct it more efficiently into the rain garden, and then allow it, if and when it does fill up that rain garden, to go more efficiently out to Eastview Avenue. Next. The final type of the final type of right-of-way green infrastructure we're proposing here is along Meadow Road near the intersection with King Avenue. So it'll be on the west excuse me, the east side of that installation. And we're just showing a picture of it here because this is generally what it's going to look like after the installation is done. So the magic, if you will, is going to be happening under the ground on this one. So this is a Silva cell style, with which Tiffany mentioned in the first part of her presentation here. The difference between the ones she showed and the ones we're proposing here is that there will not be the plantings on the front side of it in the roadway area. So we are working through this installation with the city of Columbus and trying this style of underground bioretention here, and looking at it because there was not sufficient area to place one of the other kinds of proposed green infrastructure. So we are doing this one here. And then finally, permeable paver streets. So you saw the locations on the map a few slides back, but there will be one on Meadow Road, and that will be between Thornwood and 5th primarily, with a gap at the intersection with Primrose Place. For longevity of these, it's not proposed to have those at the intersection because of the turning movements of the cars. We'll have 2 proposed permeable paver locations along Doten Avenue. The first being generally between Thornwood Place and 5th, and the next being between 5th and West 6th. We'll have one on Virginia Avenue, again, generally between Thornwood and 5th, and then finally on Eastview Avenue between Thornwood and 5th. And I do want to point out that in these locations, when I say to 5th, I mean to the alley immediately south of 5th and or north of 5th in one installation. So that last little stretch from the alley to 5th Avenue that sees a lot of stop traffic and commercial traffic through there will not be paved with permeable pavers. Next slide. So again, here's a map of those green infrastructure locations again, and they show the locations we've previously described. Next slide, please. So some of the impacts that you'll see during the construction. So some curbs, sidewalks, and driveway approaches will be replaced, just depending on the nature of the work to be done in that area. You'll see that happen. You're going to see most of this primarily on the permeable paver streets, because again, we're reconstructing that entire roadway in the stretches where we're adding pavers. Some of your existing water lines will be replaced as well. So the water lines in your area, while still operating to design standards, have age on them. A number of them are from the 20s and 30s. And as part of these projects, especially on the paver areas, to move those water lines out from under the pavers, we will be replacing those water lines and putting them in the tree lawn area or the side of the street area. There will be some new storm pipes installed. These are to divert the water that permeates through the soil underground away from the rain gardens. Some parking spots will be removed as well. So in front of the 4-walled concrete basin rain gardens, parking spots will be marked as no parking. And because of the safety concerns with a passenger side door opening its door and stepping out into the rain garden. Some trees will be removed and replaced. Right now, we're showing approximately 6 trees on the project being removed and replaced. And those trees, when I say will be replaced, depending on the size of the existing tree, will be replaced with a number of newer trees. So if it's a less than 12-inch tree, 1 tree replaced for every 1 tree removed, so on and so forth. As you see here, up to 30-inch diameter trees would be removed and replaced with 5 new trees sited throughout the project area. Some street signs will be added, moved, or replaced. So specifically, some of the street signs that may be added would be some of those no parking signs discussed related to in front of the 4-walled basins. Some steps will be installed. So this is primarily in the locations where we're proposing new sidewalk, which would be along Eastview Avenue, as mentioned previously during the questions we had earlier, as well as along the permeable paver streets. If there's not sidewalk on permeable paver streets, one side of those streets will be getting sidewalks. So what you'll find sometimes is that the sidewalks that come out from the front door of houses out to the new sidewalk, where those interface because of the grades that are going to occur, there may need to be a short step added there to the public side, between the public sidewalk and the private sidewalk, as well as, again, to some of the grading. You might see a short curb, 4 to 6 inches at the back of that sidewalk to help with grading. Some handicap ramps will be installed or replaced. These, again, are areas where we're doing sidewalk work or paving work. And then some landscaping within the right-of-way may be removed. I want to be careful to note here that this is landscaping that has moved into the right-of-way, the city right-of-way, and we're only removing it if it's being impacted by the project in some other way, not just because it's in the right-of-way. If it's not in the way of the project, it'll be allowed to remain as is. Next slide. So I think Tiffany.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit. I know we have a couple questions in the chat and hands raised. We just have 2 other quick things to touch on. So one of which is the plant survey. So as Patrick mentioned, there are 13 basins being put in. If your home is adjacent to any of those basins, so those 13 residents, we are going to be sending a plant survey to you within the next week or so. And basically what this is going to provide you with an opportunity to weigh in on what plants you'd like to see included in the basin. So it is within a palette of native plants that work well in these rain gardens. But if you have preferences on color or plant type, we have a bunch of options you can select from there. So if you are one of those 13, keep an eye out for that. We're going to mail a physical copy to the residents, but then we will also do some follow-up if we don't hear back from people. So just note that. And then Tiffany, if you want to go to the next slide here. Just recapping. So we'll go to questions in just a second. But really kind of recapping this what's next. So as we mentioned, this is final design. Pre-construction is the next big milestone for this project, which will happen in the spring of 2024. This meeting today is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube. It will be on our website. So if you have neighbors and friends who weren't able to make it today, that will all be available for them. And we definitely encourage everyone on the call and all of your neighbors to please reach out to us via phone or email if you have any questions. Like Tiffany mentioned, we'd be more than happy to come out and do site visits as well. So that is an option that's available for everyone. Currently, as mentioned, we will kind of take feedback from today. The technical team will begin finalizing the plans. They will add the plant selections into those plans. And as Greg said, those will get signed this fall. And then the contracting process will begin to get a construction firm on board. And then they will be with us next spring when we have a meeting with you, so you can talk a little bit more about what that construction looks like, what the timelines look like, what that process is going to look like for neighbors depending on what you are receiving. And then, as Tiffany also mentioned, everyone within the project area is eligible to apply for a free sump pump through Blueprint Columbus. Those sump pump installations are happening now, so we really encourage you, if you are interested, to give us a call, give us an email, sign up on the website. Someone will come out, they'll do a walkthrough on site with you and discuss where you would like to discuss the placement and the process. It's no obligation at that point. If you'd like to move forward, it's free of charge, the sump pump installation, the sump pump itself, and the backup battery. If you decide it's not something you want to do at this time, there's no obligation, and we'll just take you off the list. So also something to keep in mind. But we'll jump to Q&A now, because I know that there's a bunch in the chat. I do want to circle back to the Meadow Road neighbors first, because that was the question I left off. So Patrick, it looks like there is no longer permeable pavement planned for Meadow between 5th and 6th. Is there a reason that that was removed from the design, from the 60% mark?
Yeah, so that is correct. Between 5th and 6th, there is not pavers proposed anymore. That location was proposed as an alternative location. Through further design refinement, we were able to determine, and we'd selected alternative locations as backups should something come up through the process of the design. However, those alternative locations were those that might not necessarily provided the most bang for your buck, I guess, as it were, for the city. And far as meeting the stormwater goals, it's trying to meet balancing with the construction costs. So the area between Fifth and Meadow, or excuse me, on Meadow between Fifth and Sixth was an area that we were able to find an alternative approach that provided a little better bang for the buck. And as you can see, we are now proposing a single right-of-way rain garden at the corner of Meadow and Fifth at this point, which serves the need of the area.
Okay. For neighborhoods that have been 100% completed with the project, have basement sewer backups been completely eliminated?
Okay, so I will preface this answer by saying we are finished in Clintonville 1, but Ohio State that is doing this study is still collecting data. So last year, they didn't get enough storms collected to satisfy them as far as how many that they wanted. I think they needed 50 and they got 20 something. So they're still collecting data this year. So what I'm about to say is preliminary results, right? In 2022 in Clintonville, there were 10 people that reported a water in basement. Of the 10, 4 of them were, so we have to think about this, right? We're thinking about this matters when it's raining. So it's raining and our sewer system's getting overflowed and it's going up and out into the basement or out to the storms or to the rivers and streams. So 4 of these 10 were in dry weather, which means had nothing to do with rain. It was probably something stuck in their pipe, a private property concern. 6 of them were in wet weather. But 5 of them were not related to a capacity constraint. So that just means that there wasn't even enough rain. It was a small storm and they investigated each one of them and it was not the capacity of the system. So that's good. One of them was in wet weather and it was a huge rainfall. So it was in July of 2022 and kind of technical, but that storm was a bigger storm than our blueprint is designed for. So we designed for a 10-year level storm. This was a 10 to 25 year. So it was beyond what we would expect blueprint to be able to handle. So all of that is to say that, yes, this is working in Clintonville. As far as how many water and basements we've gotten, the results are positive, they're good. And so we're happy with this. But again, they're still collecting data and we will publish that data when it is analyzed and presented after they have enough. So after the end of this year, then we will be able to present that data.
Great. Chip, you should be able to unmute now.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
I just wanted to ask, I saw that you said there was approximately 6 trees that you're removing on Eastview. Do you know what addresses those are?
I don't have the address right in front of me, and I guess I maybe there's a little miscommunication there. If I said that Eastview only, I guess I didn't mean that. 6 trees throughout the entire project area is what I meant to say there. As far as specific locations, I would have to get back to you on that. I don't have the address list right in front of me.
Okay. Now, can I just ask the questions when you have the gardens? That's going to go into the yards. The sidewalks, are they going to go up to the gardens or behind the gardens?
Yeah.
How will that look on the sidewalks going down where the water gardens are?
Yeah. So it'll look like you'll have it like this. You'll have your street and then you'll have your curb and then you'll have your rain garden and then the sidewalk will be last. So the sidewalk isn't in the example, Tiffany. There.
Okay.
But there will still be a green strip between the sidewalk and the back of the curb everywhere there isn't a rain garden. And in the areas when the rain garden is there, it will fill up that space just in that singular location.
What's the I know you guys went out and painted. I'll have to look at that. You guys painted the lines out there. And so the sidewalk's going to be, that might get our tree. So it's actually would be in that green space that you're talking about between the sidewalk and the curb.
Okay.
I'm curious about that. So even though eventually we all know that it may get, encroach into the sidewalk, but that's all. I was just wondering just how far. So it actually is going to go behind, which might allow us to save a tree. Okay.
Yeah, so it's going to go behind. I'm not looking at that area specifically. The edge of the sidewalk is probably going to be in the range of 5 feet behind the start of the sidewalk, probably in the range of 5 to 5.5 feet behind the back of the curb.
Okay. Sounds
All
good.
this work is done in the right of way.
Yes, that's correct.
It's gonna be close.
Hey, good evening.
Okay,
Can you hear us?
go ahead. Yes,
Yeah,
you can.
this is Meadow Road between 6th and 5th. And we had the question about the previous pavements, and we did hear what you said, and we can appreciate changes happen during the design phase. We've been to every single meeting as a group, trying to represent what we wanted on the street. And I think our major concern is, we're buying into what Blueprint is doing. We all signed up for the sump pumps, engaged there. And now the sump pump water is coming onto the street, and we are experiencing significant amount of water, standing water, that, creates other problems during different times of the year, to the point where the city actually came out and was concerned we had water leaking, and had to test the water twice to understand that it was not city water. So I guess I don't understand the thought process behind why Meadow Road is taken off, right? Because that was going to help some of our drainage. And secondly, where is all the water then going to go? What are you guys going to do about that problem?
So I can't speak specifically to the sump pumps being added. I guess, Tiffany, have any Blueprint sump pump work occurred in this area to date?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Sorry, I just wasn't sure exactly where you guys were in the schedule.
Mhm.
So some of that water will go to the basin at the corner of 5th and Meadow there. Some of that water will flow there. Some of it should flow past that. That's the intent of the design. I guess during the design process, we modeled the installation, or excuse me, we modeled the proposed conditions and look at, as Tiffany mentioned, that 10-year return storm event. And then we estimate where sump pump additions will occur, and try to account for that water. Again, those are estimates, because again, during that point in the design, we don't know what has been, or excuse me, we don't know what sump pumps will be added, but that is.
I understand that. I understand the big storm, and I get
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Literally, we had kayaks going down the street, so we understand that's not something that's happening all the time. This is during typical rainstorms, during just typical everyday storms. And what I don't understand is, if you're not going to do anything to the road, how you expect the water to drain down the street to this rain garden and go into that new, I guess, which is going to be going into the drainage, which looks like in the picture. I mean, I'm not an expert, but it's a pretty flat road, right? And so I don't know, unless you're going to do something that you're going to repave it to where there's actually going to drain down there, that we're just going to have standing water significantly on our curbs on a regular basis. That is our new problem. While the sump pumps have been great, it's not created a problem for us that needs to be resolved. So I don't know. I didn't understand. I came in late. If Chip was complaining he didn't want the pervious pavements on Eastview, we can go ahead and swap them out if that's an option.
I have a
Yeah.
question.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Patrick. Is the
Go ahead.
standing water in the curb line only, or is it crossing the center line of the street? Like, how bad is the standing water in the street?
I would say it's pretty far out from the curb line. But I wouldn't say it's going into the center of the street, but it's pretty far out into the curb line. Well, the city, obviously not Blueprint, the city stopped by twice. So they don't just randomly stop by if there's not an issue. So there's a significant amount of water pooling on the street.
Okay. Go ahead, Patrick. Sorry, I just wanted to ask that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something I may have to look into a little further. I guess generally while it is fairly flat through there, there is grade that the water, I mean, per the survey should flow in a certain direction towards Fifth there. But I'll have to look into that a little further here, and I'll work with Tiffany and the outreach team to get some answers to those questions. And like I said, look at it further.
If you, I can't see the chat. So the Meadow Road neighbors, if we don't have your information to contact you already, can you drop it in the chat so that we can email or call you?
There's 7 of us together, but I will give you
One of you, somebody, whoever wants to get our correspondence.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a couple more in the chat here. One is the water line replacement taking place at the same time as, I'm assuming, the construction occurring?
I can jump in on that one. Yes, it will be. So the water line replacement, specifically in the area of the permeable pavers, not knowing exactly how the contractor is going to lay out a schedule, but I would anticipate what they'll do is they'll replace that water line first, and then immediately following come back and do the paver piece of it. So they're tearing up that, they're impacting that area all at once, but they would have to do the water line replacement, one step before the pavers, not a year in advance type of thing.
So then similarly, will sidewalk installation happen at the same time as the new paper street?
Yes, that will be the same time. Kind of reverse of what I just mentioned. I would anticipate that the contractor would do the pavers, and then as part of their last efforts be installing the sidewalk immediately the next step after the pavers type of thing would be my expectation, though ultimately the contractor has control of their schedule, when they do certain things within their schedule.
Yeah, I would just add, all the proposed improvements are going to be incorporated into one plan set for the bidding.
Okay. And for this one, I'm throwing a couple streets at you. So the question comes from Virginia. So they're at Virginia and Thornwood. And they said that Thornwood runs downhill from Northwest Boulevard. Any substantial rain creates a river. Since there are no pavers on Thornwood, how will water pooling at the intersection be addressed? Like we're talking intersection of Virginia and Thornwood.
Yeah, that's me. Who wrote that? I didn't know we were doing orally, but please go ahead. I didn't interrupt.
You're good, Tim. If I didn't say that correctly, feel free to correct me.
No, you're fine. That was.
Yeah, so looking at that area specifically, so there will be some improvements happening in those intersections to deal with, to install new storm sewer systems as part of the paver sections, to tie the paver sections back into the existing storm sewer system that is underneath of Thornwood right now. Though one of the pillars of how we design this blueprint project is we're not necessarily able to handle all of the existing flooding issues that may or may not be occurring right now. The intent of the blueprint is to address the additional runoff that is created from the blueprint projects. And so that is what they're achieving there, but there is some ancillary benefit by adding, like I mentioned, those storm sewer and connecting to that storm sewer from the paver actions.
Yeah, I think the pavers on Virginia would be very helpful.
Yeah.
The water pools. Well, one of the problems on Virginia is when they repaved, instead of a slight incline toward the storm sewer at the corner, decline, there's a slight incline, and the water doesn't flow into the sewer as freely as it might. And so there is a small lake by the curb for a day or two after a heavy rain. And the storm sewer takes a lot of abuse, not only coming down Virginia, but that downhill from Northwest Boulevard.
Okay.
On Thornhill. We haven't had any flooding from it, so I'm not complaining about it. It's just that since this is supposed to catch water better, That was a question we had, because Thornwood is I mean, it's not a catastrophe, but it does come rushing down there.
So specifically at Virginia and Thornwood, I just looked at some information I had here in the background. It does look like as part of these projects, so right, our goal is to get water to these pavers and these other rain gardens, et cetera. So especially on the paver ones, there's some minor tweaks, and when I say minor, you know, a couple of inches here or there, but it can make a lot of difference when it's flat.
Oh, yeah.
And in it, those minor differences are allowing some of that water that's in the intersection of Thornwood and Virginia specifically, and it's similar for the other paver areas, to flow back into those pavers and be taken in by the pavers. So that should help some of that situation. You're right.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
And it looks like Gary has some questions about grading. I don't know, Gary, if you want to unmute and ask those. You're able to.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, we can hear.
Maybe you don't even see me. So, yeah, essentially I have two houses in the area and I have some background about surveying and things like that. So yeah, I have video of all the stormwater stuff, missing the sewers, and it's just percolating out of the one on Doten and Thornwood. So I don't know if you're going to put these pavers in and things like that, is the water going to be redirected? Have elevations been changing? Are you changing the direction or the flow of the water?
So yes and no is the answer to that question, I guess.
Because you had pictured a rain garden on the downslope heading east on Thornwood heading towards Eastview. You're going to put a rain garden there. There is no water that ever goes there.
So
it's the same thing with in front of my house on Doten. There's no, on the west side of the road, there's literally all four tires of the cars are in water. On my side, you have literally an 8-inch flow of water because the water coming in one direction from Fifth Avenue towards Third just goes left down Thornwood. And literally, like the other person said, you could kayak down down Thornwood.
okay, so we aren't changing the general flow paths of the water. So when I say that, I mean like generally if water flows in this area from north to south, and there's some variation, generally it kind of flows towards those main east-west collectors in this project area. We're not changing those general flow paths. However, as I mentioned, when I was talking about the pavers on Virginia specifically, we are making some minor profile adjustments to try and direct more water to these rain gardens or pavers, as it were, to try to make them as efficient as possible. So specific to Thornwood, the goal being that with some of those minor profile adjustments, some of that water on Thornwood will be, you know, diverted towards the paver installations specifically, and or the right-of-way rain gardens.
So you don't even know which way the water's flowing on Doten or Eastview. I have these videos. If someone, I would love to give these to someone, because what you're saying is kind of counterintuitive to what actually needs to happen on those two streets. And I've walked around during probably 3 or 4 pouring down rainstorms where coming up Third is literally a stream. And I had this on film. If someone would ever want to take a look at this,
Yeah,
great.
Gary, you can definitely send it to us. We'll get it to Patrick.
Yeah.
Usually,
I
sometimes
was trying to figure out how to
something
compress a
that-
video. I know how to, yeah, it's not my forte. So I'll have to ask someone to actually figure that out, how to compress a video.
or
I would just like to give somebody a flash drive of the thing and say, hey, there you go.
we can do that too. We can pick it up if that's easier for you, or you can send it to our Gmail, which accepts larger files than our Blueprint
Right.
Outlook. So we'll put that in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we can also pick it up from you, drop your address in there and just let us know when to come and get it.
That's cool. And then the other question I have is I replaced the water line to my house from the main line on Doten. And I intend on replacing the water line from the trunk line to my house on Eastview at some time. And I'm trying to do that at the same time all this is done, because I don't want to do it a year or so after quote unquote, the pavers get put down in my street, and then some construction company's gonna have to rip all this up to put me a new curb cut in and run the either horizontal bore, or they drag a new copper line into my basement. What should I do?
What is your house number on Eastview?
Eastview is 1392.
1392. I'm trying to get to that location here. So
And they literally replaced all the gas lines. So the gas lines are they're on the east side of the sidewalk. So they're probably in my property where the main line is. They dug up every intersection and put new gas lines in.
it's the 1392 Eastview. 1392. Here we are. So it looks like as part of the project, because 1392 is in the area that will have pavers placed on it, there will be a new water service installed from the new mainline location to the right-of-way area. So obviously not, any of the private side, which would go from the right-of-way, the curb stop towards your house. But the rest of it will be replaced as part of this project.
Yeah, so I'm trying to time that.
Yeah, so again, as we mentioned,
Who do I need to get with it? It's not broken yet, but the house was built in 1921.
yeah, understood.
And probably the other one that I had pulled, broke into several pieces. So they had to dig into my yard a couple times to pull out, and then, pull a new copper one into the house. So I want to time that when all this is done, or have it done before that, hopefully.
Yeah, so as we mentioned, the construction kickoff timeline is spring 2024. Within that timeline of the contractor's work, we don't know exactly yet when this street would occur, but if it was done pre-2024, you would be ahead of that, or spring 2024, you'd be ahead of that.
Will they put a new curb cut in for my driveway if they change the elevation of the street?
Yes, absolutely. So the driveway apron and curb cut would be addressed as part of that. Absolutely.
Can I see these plans anywhere to see what the elevations are going to be? Because I literally have 4 inches of fall from the face of my house to where the sidewalk is.
Yeah, I guess Tiffany and I can talk about how, we handle that, but yeah, I assume so.
Okay. That's it. Yeah, that's all I have. If I can look at the plan sometime or meet with someone, that'd be really great.
Sure.
Okay, and I did just throw our email address in the chat. I think it should have gone to everyone. So if you think of additional questions, please feel free to reach out. I think we have one more that just came in. A common issue which I'm hearing and which exists on Virginia between 5th and 6th is when the streets were repaved a couple years ago, the curb height was completely eliminated, and it also impacted the flow of stormwater towards the drains and water stands in the street. I think that might have been sort of what we talked about earlier. I don't know, Patrick, you have other thoughts on that, or Greg, if you have thoughts on that?
Greg, do you want to jump in on that?
Virginia
56 on Virginia. Well, currently, we don't have anything planned for blueprint within that area, in that location, if I'm understanding correct.
Yes.
56.
I would agree.
We don't, I mean, I know you don't like to hear it. I think if you're having an issue, and we're not going to address that, try to reach out to DPS and tell them, just make sure they know that this is an issue. I don't know that they're going to do anything to fix it. I'm not sure, but it should be, brought up to them that the flow of the stormwater is not happening. So I would just encourage you to either call 311 or just report it. So that way it's recorded and that somebody knows that this is an issue. I know it's not the greatest answer, but it's kind of all we got for that.
Okay, well, I think that's all the questions we have at the moment. I want to be respectful of everyone's time on this beautiful evening. So we can jump to the end, and I think, Tiffany, we can pull up our contact information. So this project is unique in that we do have the dedicated outreach team, which means we have a dedicated email address, phone number, website. So please feel free if you think of another question this evening, or I know there's a couple people who we need to follow up on items. please feel free to give us a call, shoot us an email. We'd be happy to, like I said, come out. We can send plans, whatever we can do to sort of better communicate what is happening on this project. And like Lee said, we will be in person next spring, and hopefully I'll have all your neighbors. My understanding is there was a pizza crawl tonight that might have been a little bit more exciting than this. So hopefully for the next meeting, we can have a big crowd and make sure we are communicating everything so everyone is clear on what that construction process looks like. So if there aren't any other comments or questions, I will let everyone go for this evening. Thank you again to all of our presenters, and thank you to our neighbors who showed up this evening. We look forward to continuing staying in contact with you as this project evolves. Have a great evening.